yarn advents. I love a good yarn advent. This is a fun episode. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. This is gonna be good. Hi everybody, welcome back to The Stash. My name is Jess, and today we have a very special episode. This is part 1 of 2, and today we are going to talk about how to choose a yarn advent. And I have a little bit of a different perspective on how to choose a yarn advent calendar, because not only do I dye yarn, I make and sell advent calendars every year, and I have a couple of things to consider if you are buying a yarn advent for the first time or for the 10th time. And it's not necessarily related to my yarn advent, but I have purchased yarn advents in the past. I create them, so I have a couple of tips to look for when you're trying to buy one or you're interested in buying one, to make sure that you get something that you're gonna love, hopefully going to love, and actually going to use. So let's get started. I have a couple of top tips. So my first top tip is, especially if you're looking at a hand-dyed yarn advent calendar, is I would think about the dyer that you are considering purchasing from. Do you follow them on social media? Do you have any of their yarn in your stash? Do you like the overall vibe of what they create? So for me, I always look at a dyer's previous work, kind of get the sense of their style, because some people do like brights and neons really well. Other people do like more earthy tones. Some people focus on more non-superwash yarns in their dyeing, or some people like self-striping yarns. So you have a lot of different creators who do different things very, very well. So I would look at my personal style, the kind of clothes that I wear, or the yarn that's already in my stash, and I think, does this kind of match up to what they have, or do I already have some of their yarn in our stash, and do I really like that style? So that's always like the first port of call for me, is this something that realistically I'm going to really enjoy their style? The second thing I always consider when I'm looking at a yarn advent is I look at their previous advent work. So for a hand-dyed yarn company, if I'm looking at specifically trying to purchase an advent, I will scroll back on their posts or their social media or whatever website. Sometimes they have it on their website. Most of the time it's on their social media, like their Instagram. And I'll scroll back to see what they did last year. For new dyers, this is you kind of have to not really take a leap of faith, but you kind of have to see their other work and see what they could create. But I always look at a dyer's previous advents and think, okay, well, if they've created XYZ, they're probably going to do something similar again. So I can kind of expect to see this type of a fade or this type of a product. You know, most dyers don't like dramatically shift up their lineup when it comes to advents, because the style works for them, they sell well, and they do it well, and it's very popular. So some people do like self-striping advents, like a skein of self-striping that you knit one stripe every day. Some people do the 24 mini skein sets, or like a weekly advent. So I just look at what they've done and thinking about what I'm actually interested in, like the type of product I'm gonna be purchasing from them. The third thing that I look at is the mood boards. That's a huge one, actually. I always look at the mood boards. I also do compare the mood boards that they've done the previous year with like the product that they produced, but I look at the mood boards for the current year that they're offering. And do I like the colors? Do I like the vibe? Do I like the overall impression I get of what they're putting forward? It's not always about like the theme that sells me. It's about like the colors and how they want to either fade them together or move through different colors. So the mood boards are a big thing for me. I look at how they put it together, how it's presented. Do I feel like that's a journey I want to be taken on? Which sounds kind of cheesy, but if, you know, advents are a cost, you know, they're a bigger ticket item that I buy or that I create. So I want to make sure, for me personally, when I'm creating a mood board, I want it to be very clear to the customer what they can expect from my mood boards, right? So that's what I look for, that clarity, and I look for that journey, and I want to be taken on an advent journey through December. Another tip for picking out a yarn advent is look at the bases that you currently have in your stash and look at the bases that the dyer is offering. So do you mostly knit with non-superwash or superwash yarns? Do you mostly have DK or a sock weight base in your stash? What are you likely to use and work with? And I have a tip for those of you who are not sure, are on the fence about what to get with your yarn advent. So I always recommend, if you don't know, to pick a sock weight base, either with nylon or without, because it is the most versatile. So let's say you decide down the line you actually want to make a pattern that calls for DK weight. You just hold your sock weight double and it's roughly a DK equivalent. Whereas with the DK weight, you are doing DK, you are only doing a DK pattern, but sock weight gives you the most versatility because you can use it across a bunch of different patterns. And if it has nylon in it, you can just use it for socks as well. So great for scrappy projects, great for blankets, all arounder. So I would always recommend going with a sock weight yarn. And another thing I recommend if you are looking at a yarn advent is to be really honest with yourself. Do I actually like mystery products? Am I likely to buy a mystery pack or something? Am I okay with not having full creative control over what I purchase? And I think for some people, they love that. They love the aspect of every day in December is a new adventure, and they love the idea of opening up and seeing what the day holds in terms of yarn. And other people, it's a big investment. It's an expensive product, and they really want to make sure that they love what they buy and they actually are likely to use it. So I think some dyers, myself included, I'm starting this year, if you ask them, they will show you. Depends on if they have their prototype finished ahead of time or if they kind of do that later in the season, but it's always worth an ask. I am starting to offer this so that if someone really would like to see it and they promise not to share it, that's something I'm willing to offer them and to share with them. In addition, I think you have to read very carefully about the descriptions of the products that you're buying. So if the dyer is saying that it's a fade, you can expect the colors to move from one through a couple of different, maybe a 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. So it depends on how many mood boards they have and like how many, what kind of fade they're producing. So if you have someone who's producing something like a gradient fade, you're going to have 4 or 5, maybe 6 colors in the same color value, like hue. So let's say your advent is going from a green to a purple to a blue. That's 3 colors over 24 minis. That's roughly 8 per color. You're going to have a really slow, very subtle shift. So every day that you're opening it, it might not look super distinctive next to each other. But when you put the whole advent together, you get a really beautiful shift in color. So I think you have to, if you're buying a yarn advent that's a fade, you have to be prepared to have a couple of different color, like skeins that are the same color to make that fade transition look good. I think when you have a fade and you jump too quickly from colors, it looks a bit jumbled. That's my personal opinion, but you kind of have to get yourself in that headspace. And some people love a really subtle gradient, other people don't. So you have to kind of think about what you are likely to enjoy and what will make sense for your crafting, right? It's a very individual, personal thing. And some dyers don't do fades at all. So I know dyers who they like doing random colorways and they make minis and they have like a color palette that they pull from, but you can expect the minis to be like all these different beautiful colors, and then you can use them on scrappy projects, or you can kind of mix and match doing whatever you want to do. So that's also, people love that kind of aspect of like, it's a real big surprise. It's not even a fade. It's like every day is something brand new. So you have to think about like what you actually want, what your expectations are to open, and then try to find the best fit for your expectations. Another huge consideration when you're choosing a yarn advent is, what is your budget? Do they offer a payment plan? Is this something that you just want to pay for right now and forget about it until December? Is it make more sense for you to spread the cost until over the summer to, spread things out so it's not as expensive up front? Or are you the kind of person who doesn't want to pre-order at all and wait until they have spares? So for example, when I dye a yarn advent, I account for spares with everything that I dye, because I dye the whole advent through the summer from the first colorway to the last colorway. So I don't just do random colors. I do the whole thing in order, and I dye from start to finish. And as I dye, I put in spares in with the pre-orders that I've gotten. And when it comes to at the end in October, when I package everything and ship everything, I always have a set number of spares intended to be sold ready to ship. So some people do not want to do pre-orders for their own reasons. They that's completely valid. So some people prefer to wait until like October, November time to get a ready to ship product. So you have to think about like what your financial situation is like, what your expectations are for a pre-order, because they are kind of long, and what works for you in your financial situation. So it's really up to you. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just a matter of preference. And I think I want to get a little bit into how I run my yarn advents, kind of like give you the timeline of why I open my pre-orders so early, which seem early to someone who doesn't kind of understand the scale of what I'm doing or the timelines for things. And I think that's fair. Like if you don't dye yarn for your job, it's really hard to understand why it takes so long. So I think I would like to take this opportunity to kind of show you a little bit behind the curtain of how I work, how my timeline for things, kind of give you an explanation of why I do things the way that I do. And I can guarantee you, at least for me and all of my Dyer buddy friends, because yes, we are all friends behind the scenes, no one is out here trying to just have a jolly with your money. Like, I cannot think of any Dyer friend that I know that like the idea of sending you yarn that you hate or that is late, that is not what they sold you, like that keeps us up at night. I cannot tell you how many dyers I have talked to over the years who have said they're scared that you're not going to like the product they produce. They want to do their best. They want to, get everything. They want to make your festive season special. And that's what I love about yarn advents. That is what I absolutely love. For me, it is the most curated, thought out, planned collection I do all year round. And I think about, I've already got next year's theme in my head, and it is now March 2025. So I'm already thinking what I'm going to be doing a year from now. So like thought and care and timing all go together, right? So this is not a product that is thought out of just for me on a whim. So I'm going to give you an example of like my timeline and how I work on things and how like the Advent works within my business. So I always offer my pre-order for Advents in April. I do offer a payment plan, and the payment plan, I do 2 payments in June and August. So you have like 2 months between for the installments. I offer them in April. So I think for this pre-order for my current Advent, it will be like 2 weeks, and then I'll shut the pre-orders. After the pre-order shut, I immediately get to work. And you have to understand that I am organizing Advents before, like in December, as I'm showing off the last one. So my theme for this year is Anne of Avonlea. I had that theme booked in for months in advance. By the time like December, like before December rolled around, I was talking with the M, who's designing the pattern. I was thinking about a collaborator in terms of project bags. I had mood boards. I had the idea of what I wanted to do. I contacted an illustrator for the custom packaging that I get made every year. So plans are already going on before the pre-order even opens. It's definitely not a last minute thing for me. Advents are like a full year-long product that I create. So it takes about roughly a year from start to finish, from like, this would be a cool idea, to here is the Advent nicely packaged for you in December. So you have to think, we're going to kind of work backwards, right? So you get your Advent in December. It is lovely, but it has to arrive in time for you to open it in December, which means, especially if you have international customers, I have to be shipping in October, right? So the end of October maximum is when I prefer to ship, even domestically. I would rather you get your Advent early and have it hang around your house than you be anxiously waiting for the postie, on December 1st. Is it going to be delivered today? Is it not? So that's like my worst nightmare. So you have to kind of work backwards a little bit. So which means that I need everything dyed, dried, twisted, ready to be packaged, all of the custom packaging delivered, all that, everything that I am producing, it needs to be finished by September. So, because September, I'm packing everything, that you're talking like thousands of mini skeins that need to be individually, twisted up, put into their respective trays and boxes, and the skein sets where I'm doing fiber advent this year. So all the fiber that needs to be prepared, individually packaged. So we're talking like a very large undertaking in terms of like the scale of things and making sure that everything is correct where it needs to be. It's huge. So we're thinking through the summer, right? Well, so my children mostly have off in August, so I can't really do a ton of work in August. So I'm thinking, okay, well, I have to be able to dye this. So the pre-orders close after 2 weeks in April. The yarn immediately gets ordered. So I'm putting in a sizable yarn order for my suppliers to make sure I have, and it's actually, I purchase minis all year round. So I have a little stash of minis in my storage unit. So throughout the year, I collect, 1 or 2 kilograms here, 4 or 5, like I just kind of slowly accumulate them so that I can get started, but I also do a top-up order to make sure I have everything I need all at once. So I get really big yarn orders, almost like about a week or 2 after the pre-orders close. So I'm already kind of getting started, and then I immediately get to work. I dye consistently, and you have to understand that this is also in the background of other things. So I've got other collections coming out. I'm preparing for other festivals. I am doing clubs this year. I'm shop updates. So this is all happening in the background of other business stuff. So basically, from the time that the Advent closes until over the entire summer, I am consistently working on everything all at once. And it's manageable. Like, I think it sounds overwhelming to hear, but for me, I have a system in place. I have different protocols with how I handle things. I have balance in terms of what I can and I can't produce realistically. So I want to make sure that I don't overpromise and under-deliver. That's a huge thing for me. I want to make sure that whatever I put out, I can realistically fulfill in good time to make sure that you have what you ordered. So that's a big priority for me. So yeah, I think that's why I open my pre-orders so long. It's not because it's trendy for me. It's because it's necessary for me to give you the product that you paid for and on time and basically what you paid for. Okay, I'm not like a really like hot take kind of a person. I don't like just saying stuff. My goal is for this podcast specifically to kind of show you my perspective as a dyer, to kind of take you behind the scenes a little bit and to kind of lift the curtain to show you what it's like to be a dyer, to kind of give you a glimpse into a really weird career. So every time someone asks me what I do, I'm like, oh my gosh, how much time do you have? Because telling people I'm a yarn dyer, they're like, you're what now? And I'm like, yeah, it's my full-time job. Would you believe it? And I can't tell you how many times people are like, is that a real business? And I have to say, it absolutely is a real business. And if it wasn't a real business, I would not be doing it. Right? I'm very fortunate and grateful to, have the business I have. And part of that business is doing yarn advents. And it is a huge part of my income every year. It's one of the biggest projects I work on. It is actually, I think, for me personally, the yarn advent is it's some of the best work that I produce, right? It's one of my favorite projects. It's the most labor and the most difficult thing I produce all year, for sure. But it is one of my favorite things because it is so curated. The entire thing it just gets me because I love getting into the weeds. I like planning things. I like kind of getting my fingers in every little bit of inspiration, and Advents give me the avenue to really get it stuck in. So I look forward to Advents every year. I don't look forward to the twisting of the minis. I think that is the price I pay for doing Advents, is I have to twist all the minis, which takes me hours and hours and hours. So yeah, it's a chore, but it's, I think you have to look at the payoff in terms of like creative satisfaction, which it definitely is. My goal with this video is to kind of show you a little bit behind the scenes of Advents, to show you how I think when I purchase a yarn Advent, because I look at yarn Advents a little bit differently because I create them, because I make them. I know the work that goes into them. And I know that any dyer offering a yarn Advent has worked their socks off to get you something that they hope you're going to love, right? There are some brilliant options out there and some truly talented makers. And I don't want to name drop anybody on this podcast because I want you to find someone that you genuinely love and connect with. I don't want to influence you to purchase somebody over another, because I think there's a bevy of incredible options, and I think you will find something that you genuinely love. And there are a lot of options out there. So I hope you have the best time finding yarn advent that you're going to love. If you have any other tips for viewers, drop them in the comments. I would love to, we'll get to work. And Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of The Stash. My name is Jess. Like and subscribe to my channel for more. And we're going to be back in a couple of days and we're going to talk about my yarn advent. I'm going to take you through all of the tiers. I'm going to show you, well, I'm not going to show you the advent, but I'm going to tell you about all the options, and we're going to have a deep dive into the advent. We're going to talk about my inspiration. We're going to talk about every single thing. I'm going to answer all of your questions. So in the comment section of this video, if you have any questions about my yarn advent, anything you'd like to see or chat about in the next video, drop a comment and I'll be sure to put it into my list. But thank you anyway. See you in the next one.